Hello, I'm Toby Fox from 1.5 Million New Homes, the local government challenge sponsored by Red Loft and Hadley Property Group. The government wants us to build 1.5 million new homes, and the key delivery arm for that national ambition is local government, either as the planning authority, giving permission for new homes, or as a partner to a JV with a private sector developer, or delivering homes directly themselves. So I'm visiting a different council every month to find out what works and what needs to change to enable councils to build more homes. And this month I'm in Hounslow. It's a cold month and we're standing in a chilly part of West London to understand what makes this particular development a successful one. I'm here with Peter O'Brien from Hounslow Council to explain that. Peter, where are we? What is this place and what's it delivered in terms of new homes?
Thanks, Tony. Cold place certainly, but warm hearts here in Hounslow. So we're stood in Lampton Parkside. Lampton Parkside is a partnership between Notting Hill Genesis and the council. And we're stood on a site that, when finished, behind us will have around 940 new homes. Okay. What that doesn't tell is the full story of how we came to the place we find ourselves in. So once upon a time, over in this direction was Hounslow Civic. Yeah. Fairly tired civic centre in need of some fresh thinking. And back in the day, the council partnered with Notting Hill Genesis, gave up the land for this, and as part of that deal, just down the road here in Hounslow, closer to the high street, we have the new Hounslow House, which is our new civic centre, new library, new customer service centre, and shortly to be our new adult learning centre as well. So a real hub for our community that meets the expectations of the modern 21st century community. On site here as well, we've managed to achieve 40% affordable housing. And 75 of the units have been bought directly by the council. So the council not only using its tools as a landowner, but also using its tools as a partner to directly secure homes for some of our most vulnerable residents.
Fantastic. And what is it about this scheme that you consider to be successful?
Well, so too often I think we look at these things in isolation, and maybe sometimes we just think about the numbers of homes, or we think about how do we realise a cash consideration for a civic centre. We could have just sold that. We could have sold that and built ourselves a new one down the road and kept it simple. But instead of that, we thought, what do we really need in the totality of this, in this part of the world? And we needed homes, like everywhere else. We're ambitious for Hounslow, so we wanted to see growth. We wanted to see attractive new homes that people would aspire to. We wanted to deliver affordable homes. We wanted payback in terms of investment into the park, just around the corner. And ultimately speaking, we knew we needed to provide for our residents into the future in the form of the new civic centre. So all of that shows, I think, a hell of a lot of foresight by my predecessors to think about how can we make best use of the assets we've got for maximum public gain.
Fantastic. Okay, and what was the role of the council in making this success come forward?
Well, as is often the case, we wear many hats. So the council, of course, initially had to figure out what to do with its old asset. There was a problem, which was the civic, which would have cost a hell of a lot of money to redo in situ. And so thinking about our strategy for a new civic, of course, was an early starting point. Then realising we had a huge land opportunity, working with our partners, working with the market, to understand what the best route might be, and then agreeing a sales strategy to work with partners in order to see all of this come forward. Then we had our role as housing enablers as part of the planning policy system, but also in terms of the new council homes that are now on site here as well. So that's again us working through with partners to think what's the right solution for this place and what role can the council place. And last but most certainly not least, of course, we have the role of our planning authority, who has of course worked very positively with Notting Hill to guide all of this through.
You make it all sound very simple, Peter. It can't have been that simple. What sort of challenges did the council have to overcome in order to make all that happen?
Well, I think in terms of challenges, and in a strange sort of way, this one is almost the contrast to many of the places where it doesn't quite go right. So thinking about public land and how we make use of public land, what are the opportunities for public land? And I touched on this before, but sometimes seeing public land as just a consideration, just a pounds, shillings and pence that we can look for isn't enough, and it can go horribly wrong. We have an example here in the Borough, not so far from here in Hounslow West, called Cavalry Barracks, where that site was a public sector site disposed of to the market, and unfortunately that got stuck for a whole host of reasons, went into an administrator and is being resold again. Similar time frame to this one, And yet here behind us, we have homes that are built and being built. And on the other one, we have potentially a new partner coming in the not too distant future, but nothing has been delivered yet.
Okay.
So it won't surprise you that I believe very strongly in the power of local government working with its key partners, be it the GLA, be it housing associations, in order to secure delivery where we keep our hand enough on the tiller. We're not trying to say we can do everything, we can't, but we have an incredibly important role to play as stewards of place in our local communities.
Fantastic. And we're going to dig in a bit more to the challenges facing councils in delivering new homes. But before that, tell me what other ingredients are important in delivering successful new homes, new schemes like this one?
Well, I think we've got to remember that this is a community we're building. So we've touched a lot on kind of how you make homes come forward and how the finances of that work and facilities and assets. But ultimately speaking, this is about creating a community, and it's a community within a community. So a huge part of that, and this is something I'm proud to say Hounslow is very passionate about, is how we engage throughout a journey with our residents. Treating our residents as partners who are with us the whole way through the journey, not as someone to be spoken to at a moment in time. So I think getting that kind of whole strategy of engagement, social value, and ensure we're delivering for our residents throughout the whole journey of regeneration is massively important.
So Peter, you haven't been in this role particularly long time, but you have been delivering new homes for quite a while, and so has Hounslow Council. What's the sort of learning that you're taking out of the longevity of your work in housing delivery?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely great question. So I'm very proud to have relatively recent, I'm a year in now though, started work at
Time flies.
At Hounslow. Exactly. And one of the things that I think is a real strength of boroughs working to deliver council homes is that kind of building up of the capacity that we now have. We're into our third cycle, our third programme of council housing delivery here in Hounslow. That makes it one of the most mature in the capital since we all started to look at building council homes again. But what people don't often see is that other parts of that. Sure, they see a site like the one behind us and they think, oh, there's a council logo, they're involved in that. What they don't see is having development people who are sat in enabling conversations thinking, maybe there's a deal we could do there. Maybe we could do a bulk purchase. Maybe we could act in different ways to kind of help housing come forward, or even sometimes to help unlock schemes. Now, recently, as liquidity started to leave the market, we found ourselves becoming something like an RP of last resort. And so that kind of capacity of councils to be there with developers as they go through the planning system and just thinking, is there another angle on this? Is there another way we could make this happen? I think that's one of the real strengths of having that capacity in-house.
I'm just going to unpack that slightly. So RP of last resort, that's registered provider. So that's the developer is building the private sale houses, but they need somebody else to build the houses that are going to be for affordable rents.
Exactly that.
And that's the council stepping in to play that role.
Exactly that.
Because RPs can't do that because their focus financially is all going on improving the existing stock that they've got, coming up to new health and safety standards.
I think we've seen that trend in the market, haven't we? And it has gotten really difficult out there in terms of the capacity of both housing associations and councils to deliver new stock, and we're all worried about our existing stock. We're all worried about meeting standards. So there is this kind of moment that we're reaching where we're going to have to think very hard as a system, how are we going to unlock the potential that's being built up in these places to deliver? And the biggest issue right now is liquidity and money.
What about the issue of time? This scheme has happened over quite a long period of time, and conditions have changed substantially during that period. So how do you keep a scheme like this going over changing times?
I think it's a really good question. And one of the things I think that matters most when you're thinking over the longer term, there's two characteristics for me. One is about partnerships, and perhaps we can come back to that. The other is about thinking in terms of a framework, allowing yourself from the outset the idea that this might need to change over time. Anyone who thinks they know exactly how a place or an economy is going to pan out over a 10, 15 or 20-year period is kidding themselves. So you need to build in that flexibility to say that, okay, 10 years down the line, maybe we'll be delivering a different product, but we've got the basics right. We know where the square is, we know where the roads are, we know where the school is going to be, or whatever the ingredients are, but allowing yourself that ability to evolve over time.
Fantastic, thank you. You mentioned building up the capacity in the team. How difficult is that? Because every council wants good housing delivery teams, right? Everybody's got the same kind of impetus to build new homes. So how hard is it for you to build up that team and retain that team?
It's incredibly difficult, but it's not impossible. Part of it, I think, is about working to create an environment in which people feel they're constantly growing, constantly evolving. The work we do is hugely exciting. You're working in place. It's a massively dynamic environment. There's so many new challenges. I can honestly tell you that I don't think I've ever had a day at work that's the same as another one.
Right.
And that diversity of work is massively exciting. Now, as leaders within the industry, we have a huge role to play in kind of sharing that kind of enthusiasm about the work that we do, because it is so varied, so interesting. The next problem is probably around pathways and thinking about when you start as an apprentice, how many boroughs are running apprenticeship programs at the moment in terms of housing as an overall sector or in terms of built environment? Relatively few. I'm very proud that we are one of those boroughs that runs a housing apprenticeship program, for example. But once you've got an apprentice, where do they go next? How do you think about someone moves through the system and create opportunities down the line for them? And then the last thing I would say is being invested in people as people. So I'm just as happy when one of my team goes on to an amazing job elsewhere because that was the right thing for them to do, as I am to have had them for hopefully quite a sustained period because we've got a really exciting work environment.
Albeit it gives you a headache because you've got a gap to fill, right?
But you know, ultimately speaking, they might even come back one day, and that's happened to me before too.
So you mentioned partnerships as well. How do you create a good partnership, and how do you know it's a good partnership?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So for me, there's something about being really clear what you want yourself going into that relationship at the outset. Far too often you see examples where the council perhaps, or sometimes the other partner, weren't exactly clear with themselves what they wanted out of the process they were entering into. Yeah. They then find a partner and you've got all sorts of good behaviours like being able to talk frankly with each other, being able to disagree, being able to celebrate success together, not being shy about the fact that you're in a partnership. Like sometimes councils are political beasts. They can sometimes find themselves not entirely sure how to talk about a partnership they're in with a developer. Being clear about what you're doing it for, being able to communicate that honestly and consistently, I think gives you a massive kind of boon in any partnership.
So that wraps up another episode of 1.5 million new homes, the local government challenge, sponsored by Redloft and Hadley Property Group. We're going to be back with more from Hounslow, but in the meantime, if you like what we're doing, please click like or subscribe. Thank you very much indeed, and we'll see you next time.